Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're digging into a really fascinating historical moment,
Mm.
the end of World War II, specifically how the Allies actually won.
Right. It seems inevitable now, looking back, but it really wasn't. Our sources show this victory was, well, a complex mix. Strategy, ideology, tech breakthroughs, all coming together under immense pressure.
And our mission today is to unpack that, figure out the causes and effects of the U.S. and Allied victory over the Axis powers. We've got material on the moral arguments, the big campaigns in Europe and the Pacific.
The atomic bomb decision, obviously, and also these incredible contributions from diverse groups and scientists that, honestly, were crucial, often overlooked, but absolutely key.
That's the core tension, isn't it? The war gets framed as this grand moral fight for democracy, this crusade for civilization. But, actually winning relied heavily on things like advanced tech and the efforts of people who weren't even getting full rights at home.
Exactly. It's a huge contradiction. Let's start with the ideology piece, the motivation. Initially, for Americans, it was simpler, right?
Yeah, it felt like a clear fight. Democracy versus totalitarianism, Germany, Italy, Japan, the aggressors.
But that feeling deepened. As news got out about the sheer scale of Nazi atrocities, especially the Holocaust, the 6 million Jews murdered, and Japanese war crimes too, it changed the conversation.
It shifted from defense to something more profound. It wasn't just our liberty, it became, as some sources put it, a crusade for civilization itself, a moral imperative.
And that idea needed to resonate with ordinary people.
Mm.
That's where figures like Norman Rockwell come in. His Four Freedoms paintings, they just clicked.
Oh, absolutely. Freedom of speech, worship, freedom from want, from fear. He made Roosevelt's abstract concepts feel, well, real, tangible, what they were fighting for.
Meanwhile, you have powerful figures like Henry Luce, the publisher of Time and Life, thinking about the after. He was pushing this idea of an American century.
Right, this argument that the U.S. had a moral duty almost to lead the world post-war, spread democracy, prosperity, basically shape the future, a very outward-looking vision.
But then you have voices like Carlos Bulosan, the Filipino-American author. His book, America is in the Heart, connects the war effort to something else entirely.
He links the fighting abroad to the fight for equality at home, doesn't he? For immigrants, for marginalized groups, demanding that the ideals they were fighting for actually applied to everyone in America.
Precisely. So you've got this tension right there. Global leadership versus domestic justice, both presented as part of the same moral mission. It's complex. That moral resolve, however complex, was definitely needed for what came next. Let's shift to Europe. It's easy to forget the Soviets were taking the absolute brunt of the German war machine for years.
An almost unimaginable toll, which is why the Tehran Conference in '43 was so critical. Roosevelt, Churchill, Stalin, they had to coordinate.
And the big outcome was the commitment to that second front in Western Europe, wasn't it? Stalin had been demanding it, needing that pressure taken off his forces.
And that commitment led directly to D-Day, Operation Overlords, June 6, 1944. You can't overstate the scale of it. No, it's staggering. The largest amphibious assault in history. What were the numbers again? Over 200,000 Allied troops hitting the Normandy beaches on just the first day.
That's right. And that initial wave allowed eventually over 1 million soldiers to pour into France. It was the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany in the West. It cracked them open.
Liberation of Paris followed. The momentum shifted decisively, even though Germany tried one last desperate gamble later that year.
The Battle of the Bulge. Late 44, a massive, costly counteroffensive. It caused heavy American casualties, really horrific fighting in the Ardennes forest. But it ultimately failed. Germany just burned out its last reserves.
So with the Soviets pushing from the east, the Western Allies from the west,
Yeah.
the vice closed. Hitler's suicide, April 30th, 1945.
And then VE Day, victory in Europe, May 7th. A huge moment of relief and celebration, but of course the war wasn't over yet.
No, the Pacific Theater was a whole different beast. After Pearl Harbor in '41, Japan seemed unstoppable for a while.
They dominated vast areas. The tide really started to turn in 1942, mainly through naval power, two key battles.
First, the Battle of the Coral Sea. That stopped Japan's push south, towards Australia. Kind of contained them a bit.
Exactly. But the really decisive one was the Battle of Midway. That was the hammer blow.
Why Midway specifically?
Because the U.S. Navy sank 4 Japanese aircraft carriers. Carriers were everything in the Pacific War. Japan simply couldn't replace those losses, not with their industrial limits compared to the U.S. Their offensive punch was gone.
Okay, so naval power crippled.
Yeah.
Then came the ground war shift.
Right. Guadalcanal. A long, brutal campaign starting in late 42. It was the first major Allied offensive, and it proved Japan could be beaten on land, driven out of entrenched positions. It led to the whole island hopping idea.
Explain that strategy again. It sounds methodical.
It was, instead of trying to capture every single Japanese-held island, which would have been a bloodbath, the Allies would select key islands, ones needed for air bases or to control sea lanes.
And the others.
They'd bypass them, cut them off from supply, neutralize them without a direct assault, and just hop over them towards the next strategic target, closer and closer to Japan.
Clever, but grim. And it culminated in those horrific battles in 45, Iwo Jima and Okinawa.
Yes, incredibly costly victories, but they put U.S. bombers and forces right on Japan's doorstep, and that proximity forced the most difficult decision of the war.
Which landed squarely on Harry Truman's desk. Roosevelt dies in April 45, and Truman, the new president, suddenly learns about the Manhattan Project.
Yeah, talk about being thrown in the deep end. He's immediately faced with these military projections for invading Japan itself, Operation Downfall.
And the estimated costs were just astronomical, weren't they? Over 1 million Allied casualties predicted. That's the figure often cited. Whether it was entirely accurate or used to justify the bomb is debated, but that was a terrifying calculation presented to Truman. A potentially endless bloody invasion versus this new weapon, this terrifying new power. And he made the choice. Hiroshima, August 6, 1945.
An estimated 70,000 people killed instantly. Unimaginable destruction from a single bomb. Japan still didn't surrender.
So 3 days later, Nagasaki.
Another wave of devastation. The combined death toll, including later radiation effects, climbed towards maybe 140,000 in just the first few months. It was decisive.
Japan surrendered. VJ Day, September 2nd, 1945. The war was finally over. But the world had changed irrevocably. The nuclear age had begun.
A truly sobering moment. But, to even get to that point, to have the resources, the manpower, the technology we need to look at the collective effort. It wasn't just about the generals and the big battles.
Absolutely. Our sources really highlight how the war effort, maybe unintentionally at first, started breaking down some barriers back home, challenging racism, expanding roles for women.
Think about the Tuskegee Airmen, the first black military pilots in the U.S. Armed Forces. They flew escort missions for bombers over Europe.
And had an incredible record, right? Famously never lost a bomber. They were escorting to enemy fighters. Their skill was undeniable, and it made a powerful case against segregation in the military later on.
Or consider the All-Nice units, like the 442nd Regimental Combat Team. These were second-generation Japanese Americans.
Fighting for the U.S., while their own families were often locked up in internment camps back home. The injustice is staggering.
Yet they fought with incredible bravery and became the most decorated unit of its size in U.S. history. Their sacrifice spoke volumes about loyalty and the desire for belonging.
And in the Pacific, you have the Navajo code talkers, using their native language.
To create a code the Japanese absolutely could not crack. It gave the Marines a vital, secure communication edge in crucial battles. An amazing story of indigenous contribution.
It wasn't just men either. We hear about the code girls.
Thousands of women, recruited for cryptography, working in secret, breaking access codes. Their intelligence work was critical but hidden for decades.
Plus, women serving openly in the Women's Army Corps, the WACs.
Taking on essential non-combat roles, clerks, mechanics, drivers, radio operators, which freed up hundreds of thousands of men for the front lines. It fundamentally changed perceptions about women in the military.
So a huge human effort. And then there's the tech side. The scientific breakthroughs were just as critical.
Definitely. Like Dr. Charles Drew's work on blood plasma, he figured out how to store it on a large scale, create blood banks.
Which meant life-saving transfusions could happen right near the battlefield. Saved countless lives.
And think about bombing accuracy. The Norden bomb sight, it was this incredibly complex, almost like an early analog computer that allowed bombers to target specific factories or military sites much more precisely, moving away from just area bombing. A huge strategic advantage. And then the ultimate technological gamble, the Manhattan Project, harnessing atomic power. The sheer scale of scientific and industrial effort poured into that secret project. It's mind-boggling. It gave the Allies the weapon that, controversially, ended the war. So when you put it all together, the victory seems built on these key pillars. Allied cooperation, like at Tehran leading to D-Day. Major scientific and tech leaks plasma, the bomb sight, the atomic bomb. Crucial military campaigns midway turning the tide. Island hopping closing the distance. And fundamentally, the contributions of everyone. Servicemen, women, people from all backgrounds, scientists, factory work. It was a total effort. Which brings us back to that initial tension, that provocative thought. The war was sold as this moral crusade for democracy and liberty. Luce talked about an American century. Beluson demanded America live up to its ideals for everyone.
And the victory depended on the skills and sacrifices of black pilots, Nisei soldiers, Navajo code talkers, women code breakers, people often denied full equality.
So the question lingers, doesn't it? Did winning the war automatically fulfill that promise of democracy and inclusion for all those who fought and worked for it?
Did military victory abroad immediately translate to equality at home? That's something worth thinking about exploring further as you look into this period yourself.
The fight for global democracy was won, but perhaps the fight for democracy's full meaning within America was really just getting started.
That was the deep dive. We'll see you next time.